This week, we get to read a really rare Haftorah. Usually, Parshat Miketz falls out on Hanukkah, so we read a special Hanukkah Haftorah. But this year, we read from Melachim Aleph, chapter 3. This famous story recounts the beginning of Shlomo HaMelech's rule over Bnei Yisrael. Immediately before the part that we read in Shul, God appears to the young Shlomo in a dream, offering to grant him one request. Shlomo asks God for a listening heart to judge your nation to understand between good and bad. God agrees to this request, and our Haftorah begins as Shlomo wakes up from his dream. Immediately after, the Navi records a story which, as Radak points out, clearly intends to illustrate Shlomo HaMelech's newly acquired divine wisdom. Two female prostitutes stood before Shlomo and presented him with their dispute. Each claimed to be the mother of a single baby and demanded custody of that baby. Without access to modern genetic testing, there was no way to know which woman was the child's biological mother. Shlomo commanded that the baby be cut in half and each woman would receive half of the child. While one of the women was satisfied with this solution, the other woman immediately objected, crying, "Please, my master, give the other woman the child alive. Certainly do not kill him." Shlomo then decreed that the child be given to the woman who cried out, concluding that she must be the child's true mother. The story and our Haftorah concludes by reporting, and all of Israel heard the judgment that the king judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that he had divine wisdom to do judgment. One important question remains to be considered. What exactly was divine about Shlomo's judgment in this story? Malbim suggests that Shlomo's technique that he used to discover the true mother was so ingenious that it evidenced an unnatural ability granted by God. Rashi, however, states that a bat kol, a heavenly voice, declared and spoke before the court the mother's true identity. This interpretation is far more miraculous and understands God's gifts to Shlomo as a kind of constant access to divine truth. But perhaps there's another way of understanding what was so special about Shlomo's judgment. This case is quite unique, not only in its inherent difficulty, but also in the identity of the litigants. These two unnamed women were at the absolute lowest of the social hierarchy. They were two prostitutes fighting about an illegitimate child. It is absolutely remarkable that Shlomo HaMelech, the highest judge and most important person in all of the nation, judged this case himself. It could easily have been dismissed as a woman's dispute or not been taken seriously because of their life circumstances. If these women were denied the opportunity to be judged in court, there would have been no practical consequences for any person in power. And in fact, these women are the people who sociologically are the least likely to receive protection from the law. Yet Shlomo HaMelech judged this case himself. He didn't send them to a lower court or disparage them for their profession or dismiss them to deal with more important matters of state. Instead, he heard them out and applied his full brilliance to their case and treated them with the same attention he did the Queen of Sheba. Perhaps that was what was divine about his judgment. He used it for the most vulnerable members of society. Throughout the Tanakh, God demands that Bnei Yisrael act justly towards the lowly and the poor, to widows and orphans. God makes it very clear that justice is divine when it is applied to those who need it most. Perhaps when we consider what makes a legal system good and right, we might wonder if it works for everyone. Perhaps, as Shlomo HaMelech modeled for us, that is the definition of divine wisdom. Wisdom that is employed to protect the most vulnerable members of our society. Shabbat Shalom.